Mr. C, you want to develop the bus transport service to make it more efficient. You want to develop bus stops, a new system of paying the drivers. This is not the first time that these proposals have been made. How feasible is it at this time? What makes it different this time? You think it's more feasible? You're saying that you should never waste a crisis. No? Why is it more feasible, do you think, during this pandemic?
Ami, let me put it in context. And I'd like to answer your question by first laying out what we will face once ECQ is lifted, and also as we go through into MECQ and GCQ. What we're facing really is a crisis in public transport because of the physical distancing. We have lost already more than half of our public transport capacity. That is a staggering number. And to think of, pre-COVID, we already had huge crowds and huge queues of people, lining up, waiting for hours to get to public transport. It's going to be a lot worse. And let me explain why. Let's look at MRT3 as an example. Pre-COVID, MRT3 carried about 350,000 passengers per day. DOTR has already announced that with physical distancing, MRT3 will probably carry no more than about 50,000 passengers per day. That's a loss of 300,000 spaces on our trains. And we've heard, I think, we've seen announcements that MRT3 may actually have queues that are 3 hours long. I think that is a very difficult situation, but that's only part of the environment that we will be facing. The other part of it is that many of our public transport operators have an uncertain future if they are to rely mainly on fare box revenues. We have a unique situation in the Philippines where almost all our road-based public transport requires the public transport operator to be financially self-reliant. In other countries, London, Singapore, New York, you have the government actually managing a public transport service and controlling that service. Here, we are in a very tough situation because all of a sudden, our public transport operators will only have 50% or less of their seating capacity. This renders a big chunk of them automatically financially unviable. And we stand in the next few months that many of them, and I would say perhaps 50% or more, will go out of business. So our first wave that we've already been hit with in the public transport sector is that physical distancing has reduced our capacity. We stand to lose yet, a further major cut as public transport operators get out of business or shut down. So if you can imagine, this is like a ticking time bomb. This is the alarm that I want to sound at this stage. And I hope our legislators are listening. I hope our policymakers are listening.
So how can the government compensate for whatever we will be lacking in terms of public transport?
So Lucy, that's a very good question. And what I would prescribe is this. First, we must assure that public transport operators will be out there serving the public. So for major routes, and especially for Metro Manila, what I would advocate is that government goes into what we call leasing or service contracting or chartering, meaning that
Oh,
they would they would assemble public transport operators, ask them to form consortia,
okay.
and then give them contracts to provide the service. This is how public transport is organized in the highest quality cities. London, Singapore, they have this model where public transport operators are on performance-based contracts. So this enables the government to set service standards and then monitor performance of operators and impose penalties on the contract in case there is non-compliance. So this is
Yeah.
how the transport industry is motivated to deliver better service. So that's number one.
Okay.
Second is we need to overcome the big cut in public transport capacity by making our public transport services more efficient. So we need to improve the efficiency of our buses, our UV Express, our jeepneys. And how do we do this? So one very good strategy is to put public transport on dedicated lanes. Today, our public transport loses its capacity because they are stuck in traffic. When a bus is stuck in traffic, it has fewer round trips. It can move fewer passengers. So, for example, in EDSA, a bus on EDSA used to have about 7 round trips in a day, about 10 years ago. Today, it's probably down to about 3 round trips in a day. And there's also a big threat in the horizon, which is COVID-19 is pressuring people to use private motor vehicles. So there is now a lot
Yes.
of apprehension about using public transport. So
Yeah.
whoever has a car or a motorcycle
Right.
is now, incentivized to use
Yes.
that vehicle every day. So if
Yeah.
we thought traffic was bad, 3 months ago,
Before.
expect something even worse. And this is what
Right.
we are seeing in many cities in China today that are now coming out of the lockdowns.